Speaker, I rise today to speak briefly on the Fines and Recovery Amendment Bill being debated in the Assembly today. I want to thank the Minister for bringing this legislation before the Assembly. It is an important piece of legislation because it provides a fix to the process of issues identified in the Fines and Penalties Act 2001 during the middle of this year. For context, to those who are new to the Assembly, the former Territory Labor government was made aware of the administrative issues following a court case in June this year. It was understood that the process failures could go back as 2002, when the Fines Recovery Unit was established. The original fines, such as speeding and parking fines, are still legally valid and still need to be paid. However, any subsequent enforcement action for fines not paid, such as having a driver's licence suspended, may not have been actioned appropriately. This is a long-standing historical issue that requires an urgent fix to ensure fines recovery can clear its backlog and continue operating into the future. These process issues did not come to the attention of either the Territory Labor or CLP administrations during their terms in office. Madam Speaker, let me be clear. If you do the wrong thing, you should pay the fine, particularly when the aim is to deter people from doing the wrong thing on our roads. When this was brought to the attention of the former Territory Labor government, we acted quickly to address it. Labor established a task force and the Department of Attorney General and Justice to review the impacts of these historical process issues, come up with a way to fix the issues and ensure fine recovery could continue. Labor has already taken steps prior to the election to amend the legislation on advice from the task force, as well as planning to establish a new enforcement entity. No one likes getting a fine, Madam Speaker, but they are a necessary part of our enforcement regime when it comes to issues like road safety or public amenities. We spoke yesterday evening that the road toll is horrific. Governments of all persuasions don't and should not make any apologies for enforcing road safety rules through measures like fines for doing the wrong thing. That is why Territory Labor will support this bill in its current form. Madam Speaker, we acknowledge at the time of discovery, and this was an oversight. We do not sugarcoat this issue. We know it needs to be fixed. Territorians deserve to have confidence in government system and processes, and this problem needs to be fixed as soon as possible. No doubt the CLB will try and score political points out of this, but it should be seen that is nonsense that it is. This issue was around under the last CLP government. It is long-standing. It should have been picked up but wasn't. Now it needs to be fixed without any unnecessary song and dance. Any Territorian with an outstanding fine, such as speeding and parking fine, still needs to pay it. We understand that the CLP will support the Fines Recovery Union to continue operating in its current form without the Department of Corporate and Digital Development. They need to reassure Territorians that we, as well as these legislative amendments, that they are ensuring the system and processes are functioning as intended, and that this will be carefully monitored to ensure something like this doesn't happen again. But on top of that, Madam Speaker, the systems the CLP implement moving forward need to encompass important aspects of cultural awareness and processes. Some Territorians, particularly Aboriginals in remote settings, may go by various names. We also know that some Aboriginal Territorians don't have any fixed living address. Because of this, I'm calling on the government and hardworking people of the Fines Recovery Unit that they ensure that any future system takes this into account. A member of the remote community cannot be put in a situation where they lost their license and face further consequences on the matter because they weren't aware of the enforcement processes. I hope that the Minister will address these concerns and ensure that a fair system will be implemented for all Territorians. Thank you.
For Mulka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to speak on the Fines and penalties amendment bill that is before the chamber. A system of fines and penalties works okay for people who are not in poverty or crisis because they can manage their affairs. They have money to pay when they make mistakes, and a fine serves as a reminder of what is expected on and a penalty. But for someone who is struggling and their life is in crisis, a fine will increase that crisis, and that may not be able to, and they may not be able to challenge a fine if it was made in error. Sadly, in the NT, there are a lot of people who are struggling due to poverty, homelessness, domestic violence, mental illness issues, physical health issues, substance abuse issues, and we need to remember that for many people there can be a significant language barrier. For these people, fining them does not help. A fine is not a reminder of what is expected. It's another problem on top of all the issues that already exist. We require a government with a human face, not just a computer justice system that is harassing our poorest and most vulnerable people. There are people in our communities who need help and understanding. They need someone who can talk to them and provide assistance. This is the same for the fines that were introduced last sitting for public nuisance. Who are the people in the park that CLP are talking about, and what does a public nuisance look like? The people who I see in Darwin long grassing cannot change their lives because someone gives them a fine. They need a welfare response. They need someone who can understand why they are in Darwin. Are they here for medical issues? Are they visiting family? Can they afford to go home? Do they have overcrowded housing at home? I have lived in overcrowding for most of my time in Parliament. I have lived outside the house in a tent with my wife. We have lived in a caravan, and now we live in a container outside the house. Sometimes there are 20 people sharing a bathroom and a kitchen. Madam Speaker, this is the life for most remote people in the NT. We have tent cities which pop up around the houses in every community, which is why I know that most people who are long grassing in Darwin may have family they can stay with, but they are actually homeless. So when we know we have a and all these issues, it does seem right. It does not seem right for our government to add to their problems that these people have with a fine and further interactions with the punitive judicial system. Madam Speaker, this is the same way I feel about truancy fines. As ask people what the problems are and help them to deal with the problems that are happening for them. And also take responsibility for the problems that governments are creating. Aboriginal families and children may not be going to school because it is not a safe place. In town, we know there is racism in schools because the Children's Commissioner's report, it's up to everyone to call it out. Let's us about their experience. One younger child says, I was called a monkey because I am Aboriginal. Another child says, when people call me something that sounds racist, it makes me feel like I am not a part of anything and that I have no culture, and I feel sad and unhappy, and I feel unsafe. Madam Speaker, I seek leave to table this report in my hand here.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted.
Yeah. I want to table this report because it is very important for the members of the Assembly to read the experiences of our children and know how they feel about racism. Madam Speaker, I am not blaming anyone. This is the experience of many people in the NT, and we must work together to fix it. We need to have a conversation together so we can better understand all the people of the Northern Territory. There is a gap that exists, and we must close it through better understanding and appreciation of diversity of our cultures. Madam Speaker, in talking about fines, I want to mention that in remote schools, there may be many reasons why kids are not attending schools. In our remote communities, many different clans in one space may not feel safe of a child. Having a Baranda principle with no links to the community may not feel safe for a family. When a school does not have the good relationship with the community, it may not feel safe for the whole community. Children may not be going to school in bigger towns because they do not feel safe when they are not on their own country and clan country. And this is why homelands are important, because when children are living in homelands, they are safe on their country and their school is safe. A fine of $370 cannot fix this issue, but talking with the community can solve the issue. Many people in my remote communities are living in poverty. Instead of fining parents, come and ask us what is needed. The elders of Meningrida are right when they say they want a proper consultation on these issues. These fines will target Aboriginal families, and there are other ways we can solve these problems. Madam Speaker, this bill today corrects an error that has existed maybe for more than 20 years. The Fines Recovery Unit and have been acting illegally. It is a big mistake. Maybe it's a bigger mistake than forgetting to pay a parking. Maybe it's bigger mistake than being a public nuisance. But in this case, there is no penalty for the government because the government can come in here and make retrospective legal and legislation and say that these mistakes never happen. If this government is going to pass this bill, it would also be an opportunity to wipe the debts of anyone who is low income. It's a chance for the government to say, we are wiping the slate clean for us, and therefore we will wipe the slate clean for you. So I call on this government and to create a space for anyone who are on a low income to have their debts cleared. I also call on the government to create a position within the Fines Recovery Unit that is human, that is specifically designed to provide a helpful response and work with people in crisis to refer people to services that can help them. Thank you, Madam Speaker.